Okay, and done. Oh, finally got my taxes in.
Oh, good stuff. Man, I hate looking at all those numbers.
Same. Oh, actually, look, can I get your help? I'm trying to write a budget for next year so I can save some money.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so I want to save about $400 a week, but I can't get the number over $300, and I'm spending next to nothing as well.
Oh, interesting. Well, what are your expenses?
Okay, so I've got about $100 on week for food, $50 for bills, about $150 goes to rent. Snow trips average out about $100. Car comes to about $80. Then I've got about $30 for Friday night drinks, and only about $750 on MTG.
James, I see the problem here. You're spending way too much on food. Get a hold of yourself.
I couldn't even wait until you were done.
I know,
I was trying so hard to let you finish the joke. Oh, God.
James has read the script before, just in case that wasn't immediately clear.
Oh, lordy.
Well, welcome to the Get Commanded podcast by the Greensboro Commander community. It's the GCP by the GCC, helping you to have better games of Commander. I am the budget boy, Walt.
And hello, Commander players. I am your other host, James. And you introduced yourself with a specific title tonight.
I did. And look, I'm not going to lie. The Space Commanders gave me a little
heads
sneak
up.
peek.
Did they send you, I know we gave them our phone numbers the other week.
Yes. They texted me. It was formatted really weird. My phone bled for some time after I received the text message.
I have also, when I got a call from them, it just came through in this weird kind of crackly message. Then all my lights went off. And then,
yeah, that's normal.
Yeah, I thought.
Oh my God, it's an incoming transmission, James.
Oh,
look at that.
Thank God. Let's jump to that
From
message.
the deep depths of the galaxy, from, you heard it, the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded. Use your finances to your advantage.
I can see why you introduce yourself as the budget boy.
Yes.
So the Space Commanders, I imagine, were out in the depths of space being like, okay, we need to tell everyone in the world, in the universe, why playing budget can be a good thing. Who should we put the responsibility of this great task onto the head of? And they were like, you know what, there's this place in Melbourne. It's like this little bedroom. There's these two boys in front of a computer. Maybe one of them will be able to do it.
I was going to go the opposite way and say that I bribed them, but I like your version a lot better.
It works better with the lore, I think.
Yeah, I reckon it does. Look, we anyone who knows me well, and probably it's come through over the few episodes, 6 episodes we've done so far already, I am a budget player. I like to build on a budget. Not all my decks are budget anymore because, you know, as you play Magic, you accrue more cards. The cards go up in value. That's normally how it goes, right? But, look, in general, I love to build budget decks. And I have had actually a few people who listen to this podcast say to me that the one thing they really want us to talk about is how to play on a budget.
This is actually a surprisingly heavily requested fan episode, to be honest. It's like, because like you have built budgets so frequently that I see when you build non-budget decks that you tend to lean towards the way of building budget, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But like if you're in white, everyone goes, right, I run a swords, I run a path to exile. It doesn't even enter your brain to include those cards anymore because you're like, they're like $6. Why would I be?
It's so funny though because I'll often include, I mean, I'll get to this later, but I'll often include like other cards if I'm not building on a budget that are like $5 or $6. But yeah, I can never find the room for Path and Swords. I think because I know these other 4 cards that I'd rather include that have synergy and, you know.
Well, this is the thing when we were talking about like responding and, you know, the synergy with decks. You know, Path to Exile does not synergize with anything, but if you can find a card that works, then might be better to play. Yeah. But obviously it's one of the most objectively right removal spells to run because it's exile and it's 1 mana, it's instant speed.
Yeah, you can't really beat that. Right?
Exactly.
And look, we'll get to that later. But look, starting off, I think the most important thing we need to talk about is what even is budget, right? Because some people will hear the word budget and think of a number in their head, right? And
$750 in MTG sounds pretty good to me.
That's your budget, as we've established. But, you know, it's not the same for everyone. And so I'd like to start actually with an analogy. It's a bit of a weird one, so stick with me for it.
Okay.
But so when I was in year 12, I had
So
my...
this is 18 years ago now.
Oh my God, imagine. I had my last lesson with my drama teacher, who, spoiler alert, I went on to study drama at uni.
Influential person in your life.
Extremely important to me. Fantastic teacher. I was going to name drop her, but I don't think that's a good idea, just for security reasons, I suppose.
Yeah, don't go and dox Walt's year 12 drama teacher, everybody.
If she can even be doxed, I doubt she's got maybe she's got an email somewhere. Anyway, it was our last class of the year. And it was always really interesting getting to that class and sort of thinking about, I wonder what the teacher's going to have planned, right? Because some teachers kind of tried to make it seem like a regular class, and then they get towards the end and they'd start kind of ribbing you and be like, I remember when you did this, remember when you did this, that kind of thing. And the other teachers would just have like a party, you know.
A pizza party was a common one in high school, for sure. Domino's pizzas that you'd get like one slice of.
Yes, exactly right. You know, because it's a big thing. It's you're graduating high school. And my drama teacher, bless her, decided to take us through this exercise. And she got us to, we stood there and we closed our eyes. And she said, okay, I want to imagine yourself in 10 years.
This is very drama class already.
Yes.
Continue.
Imagine yourself in 10 years. Imagine what kind of person you are, what you're doing, where are you in the world, you know, like what are you doing? And then she got us to, with our eyes still closed, find a position. And then she said, okay, now open your eyes.
Like a physical position.
Yeah, like a physical position. Yeah. And one by one, she came up to each of us and she said, okay, I think, you know, like one guy was crouched down and he sort of had his hand out. And she said, okay, I can see that you're talking to someone here and they're smaller than you. You know, is this a child? And he was like, yeah, I'd really love to be a teacher in 10 years.
Oh, that's cute.
And that was really sweet, right? Anyway, she went out in the room. I can't remember what I was doing, to be honest.
I thought you were going into the direction of, I had my wallet out, like, doing, like, no. I'm struggling to see where the budget comes in. But let's get going.
It's like, okay, it's a stretch, but it's there. So stick with me. But the story's not actually about me. It's about my friend whose name I also won't share. But my teacher came up to her and she was sort of in kind of, it wasn't exactly clear what she was portraying with the position that she was in. And my drama teacher kind of pushed her a little bit and was like, okay, where are you? And just kind of got a little bit vague answers like, oh, I'm overseas, or I'm doing this. Anyway, and then my drama teacher got us to close our eyes again. And she said, okay, now I want you to imagine that it's 20 years from now. And exactly the same thing. Find your position. What are you doing? You know, that kind of thing. It might have been 5 and then 10 years. Anyway, the point was, you know, what's changed? And each of us opened our eyes and like things were slightly different. Some of them was a bit similar. And my friend was kind of still in the same position. And my teacher came up to her and said, okay, what are you doing? Still was getting these vague answers. And my drama teacher said this one thing. And she said, if you don't make a decision, you've already decided.
Ooh.
And she said, if someone invites you to a party and you're umming and ahhing about going to that party, you're sitting there and you're going, I'm not sure if I should go. If you do that for long enough,
you've made a decision.
You've decided not to go to that party.
Yeah, wow.
And so the comparison I want to make here, maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but if you don't decide what your budget is, Wizards of the Coast will decide for you.
Oh, wow. Okay. I see where you're going now.
Right?
Okay.
Like, there's a lot of discourse out there about...
I would have gone, I would have said EDH Rec decides. I would have said Wizards decides.
No, Wizards decides how you are going to spend your money, right? Because they are... We love the game that we play. We love Magic the Gathering. We love the cards. I even love, like, Gavin Verhey, who designs cards. I love Mark Rosewater. But Wizards of the Coast are a company. And... companies are based around profit. Wizards of the Coast is recently acquired by Hasbro, so they're, if anything, even more about profit now.
Yeah, they've got that bottom line message.
They really do. They're churning out products like it's no tomorrow. Like we just had Commander Legends Baldur's Gate 2, whatever the fuck that... excuse me, whatever that was. And we've just got Double Masters just came out as well. Double Masters 2 as well.
Electric Boogaloo, I believe, is the full title.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is, like, if we're not aware of what our budget is, we can easily get swept up in the water slide that is Magic product.
Absolutely. Like, you will just naturally by virtue of being around other people who play lots of Magic and other people who are really engaged in this game, you will just spend lots of money. You know, you see someone crack a whole bunch of packs, you see someone order a booster box, and you're kind of like
case.
A case,
yeah.
just full of booster boxes.
I remember the first time I even heard that was an option to do.
Yeah.
I was in the store and a couple of our community members were like, "Oh, do you want to split a case?" And in my brain, I was like, "Oh, they're gonna go get a slab of Corona, and they're gonna go
the same thing actually."
And because they kept talking about a case, and then Luke, one of the people that works at our store, comes back with this cardboard, like it's not even branded. That's how like expensive it is. Like
it's the bulk of bulk.
It's the box that the boxes come in, and he puts it down on the table and opens it up. And there's like, I think it was 3 people that were in the store, and I think Daniel was one of them. One of our.
I wouldn't be shocked.
And they all just kind of went. Oh god, that's good. And it's like, surely the smell is something. So at least one benefit you get out of buying product.
You get to smell the new card. Yeah, the plastic, the cardboard. Yeah.
That's a really interesting analogy. I didn't think about it like, you know, we have to be aware of the budget. Otherwise, there's a bit of a consequence that is the nature of this game and the nature of and also the amount of product that is being put out.
Yeah.
We've had, like, I haven't even gotten familiar with Baldur's Gate 2 yet. And now Double Masters 2 is dropping.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, no, none of that. I know Imperial Seal's getting a reprint.
This is normal now, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of the way that things are done. So anyway, I don't want to rail against this whole thing too much, but the point is, if you don't set your budget, it will just keep ballooning out of control, right? So, you know, your budget might be a precon. And then after that, your budget might be that pre-constructed deck and $50.
Yep.
You know, that might be your budget. And for some people at our store, their budget might legitimately be $300. And that's fine. Like, that's totally understandable, especially when you might already own half the cards, which usually happens when you've been playing for a while.
For sure.
But I think it's important to decide, is what I'm saying. You should decide what your budget is, especially if you're building a new deck. Set yourself a challenge of being like, okay, look, my decks normally end up around this price. What if I tried building this deck, at least to begin with, $100?
Yeah.
You know, what would that look like?
And then the other thing is like the benefit, because I've now seen, because we've got in our community, on our closed Facebook group for Greensboro Commander Community, you have a Post Thrifty Thursdays that goes every Thursday, which is about budget cards and all this kind of stuff. And it's become a bit of a cultural thing in our store to actually give budget builds a go. We also did a budget build event, which was around Chris Kringle, which we've spoken about on this podcast. It's, you know, can you tell Walt's got a bit of a theme? But like, it's now become a bit of a cultural thing. And I've noticed that a couple of people are now going, I built this deck budget. And I've gone, I'm glad I didn't spend the money on it because I don't actually like how it plays.
Yeah.
Or I go, I built this on a budget. Now I'm going, right, this is one of my top tier decks. I'm going to spend $300 on it.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
And we're going to talk about that as well, as when to actually decide to spend the money and how you should spend the money.
Yeah.
But speaking of how you should spend the money, the number one tip I'm going to give you for playing on a budget, we've finished the analogy. We're into the tips. You've heard it before. Buy singles.
Thank you, Prof.
It's the Professor Tolarian Community College's favorite thing to say, but seriously, if there's one thing you take away from this episode, buy singles. If you have 5, even 10 cards from Double Masters that you got your eye set on, you know, you desperately want those 5, those 10 cards, you will always spend less money buying those cards directly
than trying to go through the packs and packs and packs that it is to find it.
Just today, in one of the group chats that I'm in, I think you're probably in it as well, the Casual Commander chat that we sort of have for our store, someone was talking about a box that a friend of theirs had cracked that had 0 mythic rares in it. 0.
God, that's what I heard.
A booster box. So that's, I think Double Masters, I can never keep track. They keep changing the numbers, but I think it's 20 booster packs.
24, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And not 1 mythic rare. So
that's
like imagine if you were cracking that box and you were like, I really want an Imperial Seal. You know?
I want an Imperial Seal.
Yeah. But you wouldn't have found one in that box because it's
and
a
how much
rare.
that box would have been $500, but Imperial Seal is currently selling for about 200.
Yeah. So if you just want an Imperial Seal, you've saved half your money right there, right? Look, I don't want to be too, anti-wizards, but the packs that you open are designed to be unprofitable, right? This is just how it works.
I think that it's less that they're designed to be unprofitable for the player, because it's actually, they're designed to be profitable in the excitement of cracking them and all that kind of stuff. That's where Wizards is putting the value.
Yeah.
But what they're designing it to be is a profit for them. So it's almost like the language is the other way around. It's not profitable for you. It's just really profitable for Wizards.
Yes.
It's just that's the only thing they care about. If they wanted every player to have a Mana Vault, they'd have one in every pack. But then Mana Vault wouldn't be really profitable, and people wouldn't buy packs to chase Mana Vault.
Yes.
This is the thing. I think the chase cards are a huge part of how Wizards design their packs.
Yeah.
And that's why, Reprint of Imperial Seal is one of those cards that gets people excited to open a shitload of packs.
Yeah.
But it's about just as valuable to go buy it as a single on a third-party website.
Yeah, exactly. I think the one thing I would add that they also do design packs for, that I think we forget, especially when we're talking about cracking packs to get stuff, is draft, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's kind of... I don't think it's the first thing they were designed for, like in the very earliest days, but every set, basically, that comes out these days is designed to be drafted. So...
set boosters are a little different, but
set boosters are a new thing. But like in general, if you're buying a booster pack at a store, that pack was kind of designed to be drafted.
Yeah, so it's got a good level of power in it. It's got a good amount of commons to rare and uncommon ratio.
And so I really as well don't want to disparage. Like if you want to play draft, play draft. Draft is an amazing format.
And for new players as well, can I recommend, if you're a new player, play lots of draft because your collection bulks out really quick.
Yeah, that's when it works out pretty well. It's because what you're doing, you're spending your $30-$20 or whatever on the experience of drafting, and then you just keep a bunch of cards at the end. Like, I think draft is awesome for doing that. If you're going to
also a great community feel too.
Yeah, and especially if you're new to a store, that's a really good way to get to know the locals who are there. It's also a good way to test yourself against kind of different levels. Just by nature of the way the bracket works, you usually end up like round 1 against someone who's like around your skill level. Round 2 you'll play Daniel and lose.
And then round 3 you'll be put back in your box and play someone.
Basically, you'll be playing someone around your power level. So it's a good idea, a good way to learn Magic as well, playing draft. I've definitely seen a few people. Some of my first times in the store were definitely playing draft.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because we came out of lockdown and I basically encouraged us to go and draft as much as we could. Yeah. And you made a lot of your friends at the store just by sitting down across the draft table.
I can definitely remember the M21 pre-release was when I met bunch of the super well-known community members, probably because we were coming out of a COVID lockdown here in Australia, in Melbourne specifically. And so everyone was just like, I want to play Magic. I want to crack packs.
Yeah. I also just remember that, like you said M21, I'm like, right, that's the one with Teferi in it. Ugin was in that set. Yeah.
No, it was a great set.
Oh, the good old days.
And so the other thing I guess about when it might be a good idea to buy packs is also if, like, most of the cards in a pack are going to be commons, right? So if you, like me, play Pauper, and there's a set that has a bunch of great Pauper cards in there, 100% crack packs from that set, right?
I'm shocked that you just said, if you love Pauper, which is an exclusively budget format, don't buy singles, buy packs.
You should still buy the singles. And actually, I'm going to put a heavy asterisk next to this whole thing. Most stores have the chaff box, right?
Yeah.
At the back. So if you are after commons, especially recently printed commons, just go check there. They'll be like 10 cents a piece. Yeah. I picked up 6 copies of Deadly Dispute, which
that's like $3 each now, aren't they?
They got reprinted. They're like around $5 now. They were up around 10 at one point.
For a common? I mean, look, it's a Village Rights with value stapled to
and
it. Like,
with fixing, it's nuts.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But like, can I tell you like a cool little story about those chaff boxes?
Sure.
I found an Oko Thief of Crown in one of those chaff boxes.
What?
Once. Yeah. Like genuinely 3 mana.
He's mythic, right?
He is a mythic. I don't know how he got swept up, but I went to the store, like the front of the store, and went, look, I'm here to buy these chaff singles from here. And they were going through them and went, what? And I was like, yeah, that was in the box. And he's like, I can't sell you that for that much. I'm like, it was in the box. And he was like, look, I'll do you a discounted price on it, but I can't sell you it. So I got an Oko for like half price or something.
I mean, still, you take it.
Yeah.
That card, for those who don't know, came out in Throne of Eldraine, which just famously completely obliterated standard.
Yeah.
Every single card was busted in terms of power level, especially the mythics.
Literally, I think every single rare was game warping.
Yeah,
like Embercleave was nuts. Like,
I vividly remember like people who play standard at our store being like, "Man, I've got so many great ideas for when Throne of Eldraine leaves Standard. They were like, I've got this cool brew for the new cards. And they were like, yep, as soon as Throne of Eldraine doesn't exist anymore, I don't have to play against Embercleave every single game. Oh my lord.
That period of Magic was so, like, it was, like, Theros was in that era. Like, Uro with Eldraine, it was adventures and... Oh, my lord.
They thankfully seem to have learned their lesson, and if anything, there was a couple of sets that a lot of people were like, wow, the power level on these is so low.
I think they did that on purpose.
I think they did, and I'm kind of glad. I think it's better when you kind of have to stretch to find a cool deck. Yeah. But that's standard. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Commander, and we're telling you to buy singles. We actually have finished the talking about buying singles, so we're going to throw this bit of paper.
Wow, we're not going to get the Professor for what? Hey, look, we didn't... Oh, no, we knocked a bunch of stuff off.
Oh, a bunch of friendship bracelets. Gone.
Oh, I'm sad to whoever gave you those friendship bracelets. I'm really shocked that we didn't have the Professor guest on this segment because he is such a believer. And if you are on YouTube and watch Magic YouTube, go on to the Professor's channel. It's Tolarian Community College. He does these videos of don't buy X set, buy these 5 singles instead.
Yeah.
I love those videos. I've not watched them in a really long time, but I remember when I was really starting to get into Magic, and my partner at the time was a huge product buyer, like loved to buy boxes and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And like, that's fine. That's a way you can do it. But I was more interested in, like, what are the single cards that I need to get to make my decks good? And those videos were so interesting. And then it was actually, weirdly, that video was at the front of my mind when I was cracking packs because I was like, I'm hoping for these cards. I'm hoping for these cards.
How interesting. Yeah. No, those videos are great. And yes, a great example of his favorite phrase, buy singles.
Buy singles. You can get a playmat with it on, you know?
You can. And look, if we're buying singles, it's good to know where we would like to spend our money, right? So let's say, obviously, I'm going to recommend a bunch of budget cards across this whole episode. Yeah. But if we are going to want to splurge, let's not spend it on certain things. And I'll give an example. I recently built a Queen Marchesa commander deck, right?
I know this deck so well because I know exactly the... Can you please explain to everyone what the premise of this deck was?
Sure. So this deck is basically an ode to my amazing partner, Electro. It's just cards that I think that she would find cool. I should explain. Electro doesn't play Magic. She has no interest in Magic.
She loves the art, though.
She does.
Yeah.
And... anyway, she's a bit of a goth herself.
A bit.
So mostly the deck is full of like goth things, but it's got like a pretty solid aristocrat strategy because I found those are most of the cards that were like pretty goth looking.
And it kind of makes sense. Like the style of play and the style of art do blend together quite well.
Yeah, they do. And like black in particular really fit that. But also like she likes particular things, like she's Greek and she loves Greek mythology, so I found room for a couple of Theros cards in there. Cool. Yeah. Anyway, and so this was actually not a budget deck. I built it from mostly cards in my collection, but I splurged a little bit on certain things.
Have to. It's an ode to your partner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But importantly, I want to give an example of what $20 did in the buying of this deck, right? Mm-hmm. So, example of what I could get for $20, and I want you to tell me which one you reckon is the better value for your deck, right? Sure. So for $20, I could have got a Shattered Sanctum and a Dragon Skull Summit.
The two lands, there's one red-black.
One's red-black.
And it's a tri-land.
One's white-black, one's red-black. The Shattered Sanctum, I think, is the...
Tri-land?
No, it's like if there's 2 or more lands, other lands, enters untapped.
The check land, yeah.
Yeah, the check land. And the Dragon Skull is like if you have a swamp or a mountain.
Yeah, solid cards.
Yeah,
solid cards.
Good lands, right? Or, again, $20 at the time of recording this video. I could get an Ophiomancer, Bastion of Remembrance, and Ravos Soul Tender.
That seems like way better value.
Yes.
That's way better value.
Right?
Not only is it way better value just in terms of like you get 4 cards instead of like 2 or 3, but you get cards that do something in your deck.
Right.
And you're really excited to play.
Exactly.
I don't think I've ever seen someone play Bastion of Remembrance and going, Bastion of Remembrance. They usually put it on field and go, Bastion of Remembrance.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's a part of your deck that functions.
Yeah. And look, lands are great, and I'm not saying, like, don't run good lands if you have them, but, like, they're not exciting to play. Right? And we want to have fun games of Commander where we feel like our decks are doing stuff. So let's have more of the cards that do the fun stuff that we want to do, right?
I could not agree with you more. It's really funny. I have a lot of decks, and I do spend quite a bit on mana base because I play a lot of colors. Like red blue is really terrible for mana fixing. So I play a lot of rocks.
Printed a lot of the good lands for that.
And so I generally have to buy when I'm in Izzet, I have to buy the Stormcarved Coast. I have to buy the Steam Vents. I have to buy these cards to make the mana base a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I've never gotten excited to shock into Steam Vents. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, it doesn't really happen.
It doesn't happen. But I have seen, on the flip side, someone get really excited to play a tropical island, or a volcanic island, or something like that. But again, it's great because, they're some of the most expensive and sought-after cards in the entire game. But are you excited to play it, or are you excited to show it off?
Yes, it's kind of a different thing.
Yeah, because is it actually affecting your game? Because, I lost 2 life for my Steam Vents, and you played your volcanic island for nothing. It's 2 life. We're in a 40 life game. Are you really that far ahead of me?
It's true. And look, I think most commander decks are 2 colors, right?
Yeah.
I think that would be...
I'd say 2 to 3 for the standard.
I own 13 commander decks now. I think I have...
surely.
I think it's more. I think it's like 9 or 10 are 2 or less colors.
Yeah, got a monocolored red one.
Yeah, so, and in those decks, you really don't need the super fancy land. 3+ colors, you can start wanting to splurge a little bit, but it's not going to make that much of a difference to have the life gain tap lands and the scry tap lands and the ones that check for how many basics. You know, the Zendikar ones?
Oh, yeah.
Those are so fine in a budget deck. So, or just in a deck in general. Like, you really don't need to worry that much about it, to be honest.
And also, again, these are cards that you put your money where it's going to be valuable. So, if you're building a race car, right? Like, imagine you're budgeting out where you're going to put the money. Are you going to spend a ton of money? And it's a race car, by the way. You're designing it to win races.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to spend a load of money on the paint job or on the engine?
Yeah, it's the engine, right?
It's the engine. You want it to go really
You want to race. You want
fast.
you want the experience of racing the car, and likewise, if you're building a commander deck, you want the experience of playing the commander deck.
Exactly.
Right? And playing the commander deck is not playing your land, is it?
No.
Really?
Everyone does it on turn 1. Everyone does it on turn 2.
Yep.
By turn 7, I forget to.
Right? We're too busy doing all the other fun stuff. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about other areas of the decks that can also be kind of... You put the money where it's valuable, for example. So I'm thinking, for example, removal spells. We spoke a lot about it in
the responding episode. Yeah.
Monster episode. But we mentioned Assassin's Trophy, for example. I don't know what, it's probably $10 or $15, something like that.
Yeah, 13, 14.
Yeah, something around that. But Assassin's Trophy is a fantastic removal spell.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. But there are $2 removal spells that do just as good.
Yeah, or less.
Or less.
I can think of, just generically good removal spells that are, less than $2.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, so I think of my removal in 2 ways. There are spells that are just good removal because of the rate, because they're an instant usually.
Or because they hit anything.
Yes, that kind of thing. Or there are removal spells that are great because they synergize with your deck. We talk about this a lot in the responding episode, so I won't go into it. But in terms of just amazing... generically good removal in any circumstance. Disenchant.
Awesome.
It's 25 cents, 1 and a white, destroy target artifact or enchantment.
It's a sideboard card in every white pauper deck.
It's just fantastic, right? Resculpt is a new one I've been trying.
Love Resculpt, actually. I'm a huge, as a blue player, big fan of Resculpt.
This ticks all your boxes because this is
instant speed, it's cheap, because it gives a 4/4 elemental.
Yes.
So look, it's a 4/4 elemental in Commander, who cares?
Yeah.
But a blue, it's exile as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Exile, 2 mana, blue. Mwah,
yes.
Love.
And it's exile target artifact or creature. So
it hits artifacts too.
It hits artifacts.
Good.
I've tried it a few times, having heard, I think it was Rachel Weeks, just sing the praises of this card. And let me tell you, again, the 4/4 does not matter.
No,
at all.
It really doesn't.
And the ability to exile something 2 mana, instant speed in blue,
it's so
a creature or an
good.
artifact. It's amazing.
It's so good. But
super
then,
solid.
as well, you got cards like Feed the Swarm, which is finally a black card that hits enchantments.
Yes, it
Huge.
does. It does.
So this
sorcery speed, which is a drawback.
Yeah, but again, it's one of those cards in its colors. It just shines. Because if you're playing mono black, you need to include a Feed the Swarm now.
Yes.
There's no reason why you shouldn't.
It's true. I think it's worth know at least a little bit about the color pie when you're choosing your removal as well.
Yeah.
Especially because, again, most commander decks are 2 colors, right?
Yeah.
If either of those colors is white, for instance, don't, like, let's say it's an Azorius deck, it's a blue-white deck, actually don't run Resculpt, I would say.
Because there's better white ones.
Because you'd rather have Disenchant, because that's going to hit any artifact or enchantment that covers that whole
or
chunk of
Return
the
to
board.
Dust, get 2 things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, kind of know roughly the tiers that the removal sits at. So yeah, if you're removing artifacts or enchantments and you're in green or white, your spells that remove artifacts or enchantments should be green or white, because those are going to be the best ones, best bang for your money, right? If you're looking for your creature removal and you're running black, all your removal for removing creatures should be black, right?
And again, like if you're countering spells, use the blue ones.
Yes.
Why would you use Mana Tide when you have much better counter spells?
It'd be pretty funny, admittedly. But
look, I once tapped out in my Zaxara deck for a huge Torment of Hailfire. I think it was like X equals 30, something like that.
Oh my god.
And I got Mana Tide and didn't leave any. It was the single most embarrassing thing a blue player could get by.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're even playing blue as well.
I was in blue. And you know what's even worse? I had Power Sync, which is 1 blue and Delve for X and counter target spell unless they play X. I could have just left 1 blue up and used my graveyard for the rest of the mana. But no, I was way too confident.
That's the James way of doing things.
100%. Right? And this is that my Timmy's coming out again.
Yeah, exactly. A good red spell for removal under $2, Chaos Warp.
I love Chaos Warp.
Hits anything.
It's so fun too.
It just hits anything. And like, especially if you're in mono red, mono red just does not hit enchantments. It's not like black that has the 1 or 2 cards now. You just cannot touch them. Except with cards like Chaos Warp that do non-land permanents. So yeah, like I'm still shocked that Chaos Warp is so cheap because it's one of those cards where it's like there's no other card like Chaos Warp in red, at least.
Yeah, in red at least. I think now, like, we're starting to see red do a little bit more of this on cards, where it's like, it's a really good card, but the downside is your opponent gets something.
Yes.
So, like, Tybalt's Trickery is another one of these red cards.
Always counters a spell, but sometimes gives your opponent something massive. Right?
Yeah, but it's like, Chaos Warp, like, you might flip something off the top that's even more scary, which has happened in a couple of games.
And
but
it's usually pretty funny, again.
90% of the time, you're flipping a land or a spell or like an instant or sorcery. So it's not that bad. And again, you're thinking about, okay, I'm in these colors. I'm in mono red. Where am I putting my money to get the best value?
Yeah.
And Chaos Warp is 2 in a red at instant speed.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's anything.
Yeah, and it's under $2. And I think there's also a bit of a misconception. Like, again, we should be putting our money where we want it, right? Like we talked about, the race car analogy is a good one. But also, know when we don't need to spend the money. So this is why I'm giving you all these removal spells. I'm telling you, like, you don't need Assassin's Trophy.
No.
Like, it's a great spell. If you have it, run it, 100%. But, like, you can not run it and you will be fine. Like, I build decks. I almost never spend money on good removal because there's so much great budget removal out there. And these are just, again, the generically good ones. I'm about to go into, as well, synergy pieces, right? Removal that can synergize with your deck. Dispatch is one of my favorites.
What's Dispatch again?
Dispatch, it's an instant for a white, so 1 mana.
It's pretty good already.
Tap target creature. It has other text. It's
my face dropped, by the way, when Walt said tap target creature. Because, by the way, if you've never played against a card called Twiddle, please look it up. It is a phenomenal card, and I and many other community members have lost to this card.
Twiddle.
We'll let you explore that one.
Oh my god. Anyway.
So Dispatch. Tap target creature.
Metalcraft. So if you have 3 or more artifacts, exile target creature.
Oh my god, it becomes a Path to Exile.
But better.
Because they don't get a land.
No, they don't get anything.
So if you're playing Boros Bonk with like a bunch of artifacts, that is just objectively way better to play than a Path of Swords.
Or if you're a weirdo like Walt and you've got a Selesnya artifacts deck. Also just amazing in that deck, right?
I never actually thought about how you could, like, because 1 and a white for instant speed removal.
White.
The one, oh my god, just white.
Just white.
Just white.
It is upside. It is better than Path to Exile
or
and Swords. Because they get nothing. That you just exile their creature.
The prerequisite is Metalcraft.
Yes,
which
so
if
3
you're
or more
playing
artifacts.
an artifact deck,
Easy.
you have by turn 2.
Yeah. basically.
That is insanity.
It's so good. And like, downside, tap a creature. Like there will be times when you don't have Metalcraft and that'll still save your butt, right? Someone's playing a huge creature and they're going to swing at you. Just tap it.
My favorite thing is like beginning of combat, Xenagos triggers, target Golter, it becomes a 24/24. Before you declare attacks, tap.
Yeah, that's a feels bad for whoever's playing Xenagos in that circumstance for sure.
Love it.
Another fun. This is just Walt's favorite Thrifty Thursdays cards now. Abjure. Do you remember this one from Thrifty Thursdays?
I do remember this one. This is a blue card, right?
It's a blue card. It's a counter spell. So for a blue, as an additional cost, you have to sacrifice a blue permanent counter target spell.
That's pretty good.
Again, 1 mana. Like the upside.
Phenomenal.
And if you're playing it in a deck, so like the deck that I run it in is around me of the dead type.
Oh, you put something what you want in your bin.
Yeah, exactly. You got Muldrifter in play. You're like, yeah, cool.
Draw 6 cards next turn.
I'll counter your spell and get my Muldrifter in the bin.
Wow.
So some of these have hoops to jump through, but the point is you want to find the cards that the hoop is not a hoop for you.
Yeah.
Metalcraft is not an issue for an artifacts deck, and sacrificing a blue permanent is not an issue if you're a graveyard deck.
Yeah,
right?
no, that's huge.
Yeah.
And again, that is just objectively better than running Counterspell in that deck. And this is the thing, we talked about it a lot in the responding episode, where the type of responses should synergize with the deck, so we might go on about it. But if you can find these cards, use them. Can I ask, because you do this a lot, like I'm looking at the script here, we've still got more cards to go through. Where do you find the cards? It's Scryfall for you, right?
Yes, it is. I'll give a very quick rundown of how you use Scryfall to your advantage. So Scryfall.com, I think it's Scryfall.com. If you just Google Scryfall, it's the top result. Yeah. It's basically a search engine. People who've been playing for a while are probably familiar with Gatherer, which is the one that's actually run by Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, and it's got the Oracle text and all that stuff. Some rulings.
Scryfall is about 1,000,000 times better at everything that Gatherer tries to do. Even rulings, I will say. All the rulings are in Scryfall, often before they're in Gatherer, which is wild.
Whoa.
Yeah. Anyway, Scryfall. So you go there. If you're just looking for a card, you can just use the search thing. Like if you're just looking for Abjure, you can just type in ABJURE and there's Abjure, right? It'll just show you the card straight away.
What a weird word.
It is a very weird card. I had to look up the meaning of half of these when I wrote the Thrifty Thursdays for
What is the definition of Abjure?
I think it's like...
Is it to like...
I think it's like to murder someone who is below your rank or something.
To abjure?
I think so. Oh, no. I can't remember. Or maybe it's like demotion. I can't.
We might have to look this one up.
Maybe, another time. Anyway, but then the key thing you want to do is underneath the search section, there's going to be a little thing that says advanced search. And you can open that. There's a bunch of options that come up. The main ones you're going to want to be looking at is there's an option where you can choose the colors of your commander.
So it only searches cards that can fit your command.
Yes, because there is actually a specific criteria that affects whether a card can be played in your commander deck, right? Like it's color identity, which is different than the color of the card.
Yes.
Anyway, so if you just choose blue-white in that section there, it's only going to show you cards you can play in a commander blue-white deck, right?
Which I do want to just show off some commander knowledge here. Can include cards like Blind Obedience, even though it has
the extort thing,
hybrid thing for extort. It is in the reminder text. There you go. Stella and all you like hardcore rules fanatics out in the audience, enjoy that.
It's a super weird one, that one. Anyway, so the main things you're going to want to do. You're going to want to change your color identity for the commander that you're building, right? Then you're going to want to scroll down a bit. Towards the bottom, there's a bit where you can choose price USD.
I have never seen that. I've used Scryfall a bunch and I've never looked at that.
Yeah, you can just set, think of a reasonable, absolute maximum. So when I'm building a budget deck, $5 is good because that's US dollars.
Yeah.
It's going to, cut anything that's completely out of your budget probably. Set that at $5. Then you're going to want to... Then you can do whatever you want, basically. Whatever card you're looking for.
For creatures, instants.
Think about what you want to find for your deck. So let's say I'm building my Arami deck, right? Yep. I could just change in the type search, I can change it to creature. And let's say I want removal. I might go...
Destroy in the type.
Yeah, I might just type in the rules text, destroy. And then all that it's going to show me is creatures that say destroy on them.
That are in black.
That are in blue and black, in that case. You can also do some really interesting stuff, like you can choose mana value, which, let me tell you,
huge.
When I was building an Obosh deck and I wanted odd CNCs.
Oh, wow, that's super handy.
Useful, right? You just choose 1, or you choose 3, or you choose 5. That's really useful.
Super handy.
The other one I'll recommend for pretty much any search is towards the bottom. You can choose how it will order the results. So by default, I think it's alphabetical.
Makes sense.
You can choose EDH Rec rank. And it will show you the cards that are played most commonly in Commander decks at the top. I will say, at that point, you might as well visit EDH Rec. Like, it's giving you the top things.
If that's actually really, like,
it filters out the stuff
handy.
you don't want.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
but also, then you just click page 10 down the bottom and go look at the really weird cards.
Yeah, totally. Anyway, there's like a million other things you can do with Scryfall. You can actually do all of that stuff if you know how to type the syntax directly into the search bar. I don't know how to. Just use the advanced search. It literally does exactly the same thing.
That's pretty cool.
If you're looking for budget cards, that's my recommendation.
Well, that's how Walt does it, and I can attest to I've been over your shoulder when you're doing it, and I have like taken notes behind you while you're working, and been like, that's an interesting blue card.
I honestly, I could rave about Scryfall all day. It's friggin' amazing. And speaking of cards that I would find on Scryfall, let's say I was doing that exact search actually.
Yeah, okay.
The around me search, right? So I've changed my color identity to blue black. I've said $5 US maximum. I'm sorting by EDH Rec rank. I want to destroy something. Let's say I've got, with a Rami, I probably want an enter the battlefield thing, right?
Sure.
So I might type in the rules text, enters destroy.
Yep.
And then I'm going to hit search and find all the creatures because I want to reanimate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right at the top, I basically guarantee it. You're going to find Shriekmaw.
I knew it. I knew Shriekmaw would be the one.
Right? So Shriekmaw, I think for 1 and a black, you can evoke it. So like it enters the battlefield and dies straight away. Yep. So it enters the battlefield and dies immediately. Destroy target non-black, non-artifact creature, I think is the text.
I think so.
And then to just cast it is 5 mana. But the important thing is, in a graveyard deck, for 2 mana, it's sorcery speed, but you remove something, but then it's straight in your bin.
And then even better, in an Arami deck, when you give it Encore, 3 of those bad boys pop up.
Exactly.
And you get to pop 3 things on the table.
Yes. Also really good in the good old classic Marin deck.
Oh, yeah. You just keep looping it.
And gives you an experience counter as well every time that you're doing that.
And in the early game as well, that's huge, because usually, or in the late game, it's great because it stays on the battlefield. Or in the early games, it's great because you evoke it and it goes straight back to bin, so you can do it again at the end of the turn.
Exactly.
There you go. Marin players.
Super good. A weird one for you. I went by color here. I don't know if you can tell.
Okay,
Kazul's Fury.
I run this card. I love it because
it's super good.
So one of the secret win cons in my Firelaf deck is Fling. And Kazul's Fury is a redundancy copy of Fling.
And a land, importantly, right?
In a Firelaf deck, it's so good.
I
have, by the way, finally done the trick of playing a bounce land and returning one of the modal dual-face lands back
so you can
hand.
play it as the spell?
Oh my god. Do you know how good I felt when I did that?
I know, right?
It was like, I am a sequencing genius. I listened to last week's episode on the order, and I now know how to play my lands. I was so happy with that, but the secret win con, right, is just, so you know my Firelaf deck. When a land ETBs, you put 4+1 counters on target planet you control.
Yes.
Now, my deck is designed to have multiple landfall triggers in one turn, so I can make an army of big dudes and swing in with a bunch of buff plants.
Yep.
But if you manage to play 1,000,000 lands in one turn, put them all on one plant and throw it at someone's face, it's so much funnier.
That's pretty funny. And also the plants are so expendable in that deck. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you don't care about sacrificing a plant. Like normally, like I played this deck in my Rada deck, right?
Yeah.
Which makes Rada huge. It's like a Voltron deck, right? It makes Rada huge and then you swing. But as just like a safety, in case someone's like, okay, I path her, then I'm just like, in response, fling it at you, right? But it's my commander, so it feels bad. But your plants are just like fodder, right?
Oh my god. And I love it when someone removes Firelaf. I'm like, oh, thank you for letting me get more plants.
I've made that mistake so many times.
Because it's like, because I put a lot of sacrifice outlets in the deck. Like, Goblin Bombardment's huge.
Yeah,
but like
Greater Good I've seen a few times.
Greater Good is massive. It's such a good card draw engine. But like, yeah, when someone removes Firelaf, I'm like, oh, cheers, I'll get more plants. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we didn't explain what Kazul's Fury does.
Oh, it's Fling. It's a redundancy.
It's literally Fling.
Yeah.
It costs 1 more mana, so it's an instant speed, 3 mana. Sacrifice a creature, deals that much damage equal to its power to target creature or player. But it also is a land on the other side. So this can just be a land in your deck that also doubles as a removal spell. It's amazing.
It's so good.
If there's any upside in your deck to using that card, just run it. It's a land. Like, you just don't care. So good. Green one. Kenra's Transformation.
1 and a green aura turns something into a 3/3 elk.
With no abilities. This is like the ultimate creature removal, and you draw a card. So again, this is in the synergistic section of the removal, right? So this is just any enchantment deck. Any deck that cares about how many enchantments you have.
Siona God of the Pyles, it will trigger and get you a soldier.
Any, like, especially the new... What's the one that literally is an enchantress in your command zone? They just printed it. It's like Modern Horizons 2. It's like a green and a white. And it's just when you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card.
That's insanity.
Yeah,
crazy.
It was nuts. They wanted it for modern, and then naturally it's like, oh, cool, I have a commander that draws creature, me cards.
Yeah, stapled to it.
Yeah. So any sort of deck like that, Kingdom's Transformation is going to be amazing. Again, all of those cards at the time of recording are less than $2. So this is going to cost you nothing.
See, that's crazy. We just spent like easily 10 minutes raving about like 5 cards, 1 from each color, and the card that we initially spoke about was Assassin's Trophy. Which, by the way, this is how the conversation for Assassin's Trophy would go if we were doing a podcast on it. You ready? Enjoy this. All right, so Walt, today we're talking about a card, Assassin's Trophy. What do you think of it? It is a bit expensive, yes. It is a bit expensive. It's fine, but it's a good card, right?
It's good. Yeah, it's really good.
It's good. Yeah. And that's the end of the podcast.
Oh my god, we can see like the audio in front of us. It's just this blob of blue of me crying. I'm so sorry. I'm sure that sounds awful.
Rest in peace, headphone users.
Rest in peace, me trying to edit that sound to make it not.
But look, that's essentially again, like, one conversation about Assassin's Trophy is, yeah, it's good, run it.
Yeah.
These cards are like, it synergizes, it does this, it does that, and it's 25 cents.
Exactly. And that's your removal, right? Like, you can have the rest of the cards in your deck can be exactly the same. Like, I just wanted to throw removal out there because, like, we all need it, right? We've talked about it in the in response episode. Like, we all need some. But like, that can be cheap. The cards that make your deck great can be cheap. In my Chaser deck that I built, I splurged on a few cards like I talked about, but also most of the deck cost me nothing.
Yeah.
Like, Viscera is a free sack outlet that scries 1 when you sack a creature, right? Weaponcraft Enthusiast. Do you know this one?
No.
Just like
funny name though.
I know, right? It's 2 and a black. It's a creature. It enters the battlefield. I think people don't remember it because it uses a keyword that nobody remembers anymore. Oh my god, I can't remember what the keyword is. Oh, I can't remember. I know what it does, though. Yeah. Which is you either put 2+1 counters on it. Spoiler, you never do this. Or you make 2 Thopters.
Fabricate.
Fabricate, yes. Fabricate
servos,
2.
I think. It's servos.
Servos. Maybe it's servos, yeah.
Oh, so, we got there with that Scryfall. Look at us go.
But the main thing is, this in an Aristocrats deck is a 3 mana, make 3 creatures.
That's huge.
Creature as well.
Yeah.
So if you're reanimating it, you're like, make 3 creatures, right? Yeah. Less than $1. Amazing card.
So good.
Morbid Opportunist. Played like 1 time in this deck. I was sleeping on this card so hard, and so is everybody else. 2 and a black. It's like a 1/3 rogue, I think. If you're a rogue's deck, it's extra good.
Yeah.
Whenever 1 or more other creatures die, draw a card. This triggers only once per turn. You hear that triggers only once per turn, you're like, oh man, this sucks. It doesn't care if the creatures are yours or not.
So wait, hang on. When on an opponent's turn, if they're playing a sacrifice deck, you're drawing.
No, not even a sacrifice deck, James. Someone blocks and a creature dies. If a creature hasn't died that turn yet, you just draw a card.
Spoiler alert, in Magic, creatures die.
Creatures die, especially in Commander. Like,
yeah, that's huge.
Think about how many turns you see where a creature doesn't die.
This card fits into one of my favorite categories of power level of cards. I call it, as you said, it's a sleeper card. People sleep on it. Yeah. So it's on the table, and everyone's like, it's not that good. But it's because, like, okay, you play Rhystic Study, and people are like, oh no, it's a Rhystic Study, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it.
It's going to draw all the removal.
You play this card, and everyone's like, that's all right. You draw a card a turn.
Yeah.
But you let that go round 2 rotations, you've drawn 8 cards.
Yeah.
If that works every single turn, you've drawn 8 cards.
And very easy to break with a card like Ophiomancer.
Oh, and if you have a sack outlet on the field.
I had a game where I had a sack outlet on field that was free. I had this card down and Ophiomancer. And so, spoiler alert, Ophiomancer makes a snake every upkeep if you don't have a snake. So if you have a free sack outlet,
before the end of the
you
turn,
just every turn sack the snake. And in this case,
a permanent death touch blocker
snake,
and draw a card.
Oh my god, the sack outlet was Viscera.
So you were scrying and oh my god!
It actually, so sadly, works the opposite of the way you'd think because you always do the cost
it triggers first.
So you draw a card, then scry one, but then also you're drawing the card the next turn.
Oh,
so every
this
turn,
is insane.
I was drawing a card and scrying one and getting a death trigger.
Death touch blocker as well.
Yep.
So hang on, that combo. So Ophiomancer is what, like $5?
$5 roughly.
This is a $7 card draw blocking scrying machine of a combo.
And again, like I'm playing an Aristocrats deck. I want my creatures to die.
Have you got a Bastion's Remembrance down?
Yeah.
Or in like if you got keep going with the combo. You got a Bastion's Remembrance down and Daxos. You're gaining a life and draining the table every single turn.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, I love that
Absolutely
combo.
nuts. Well, speaking of, the next card I was going to talk about was Falcon Wrath and Noble.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. That completes it. Yep. Done.
And that's a less than $10 combo.
Yes. And each of those cards are just settings, aside from the Ophiomancer,
yeah,
less than $1.
And again, I love the fact that these cards are all sleeper cards. People see them on the table and go, okay, sure, you can have that. Because I'm more scared of the person that just cast the Mystic Remora, the Rhystic Study.
Yeah.
Those really expensive blue card draw engines that are in of themselves an engine. But like, how many okay, at our store at least now, people are paying the one for Rhystic.
They've learned the lesson.
So you're probably drawing more cards than a Rhystic Study player with Morbid, what was it called?
Morbid Opportunist? Yeah, I'd say so. And that's the really cool thing about the budget deck as well, is that you don't care as much about when your stuff dies because you're just gaining incremental value from the cards that you play. And look, I'm telling you, if you watch JLK play on game nights, it doesn't completely disregard the price aspect in terms of this episode, but look at his deck lists and the way he builds them, and it is incremental value. He doesn't play that many huge, amazing,
He's not a Timmy.
He's not a Timmy.
But also, he's not a Timmy with his wallet either. That's the thing.
No.
He will, yes, okay. I'm saying they're not Timmys with their wallets, but they're game nights. They have the money to spend.
Yes. So they just own the cards already.
And they will crack a fetch land and not shock in an island, a volcanic island.
Yes.
They will do that.
Yeah.
But that's also just making their deck slightly more efficient. But if you look at the way they play, the cards that they, again, the car analogy, their paint job on the car is exquisite. The flames down the side really make it work.
Yeah.
But the engine that they use, that's from Super Cheap Auto.
Basically. And if you look at the deck list, you'll find a bunch of the cards will be expensive. And some of the cards that are expensive will be extremely expensive. There will be $1 or $2 cards in that deck because price does not automatically equal power level.
And this is the thing, I've heard this conversation so often in the store, and I've had to jump in, quite, rudely push my way in and go, excuse me, that's not correct.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that Magic the Gathering is the first and longest running pay-to-win game. Which I think if you're playing competitive Magic and you're at the top tier standard areas and where there's a meta for the game, yes, you especially you'll see it on Arena. You play on Arena, you will see the same deck list, the exact same deck list pop up with different opponents because people know and they break it really easily. Commander, totally different game.
100%.
It is a game that is so diverse because of the amount of cards that you're allowed to play.
Yeah, the card pool is massive, right? There's no format that's even close.
No, it literally isn't. Well, no, it doesn't. I'm thinking of all the legal formats that allow you to play everything. But they're ban list. Pauper, but you're only allowed to play commons.
Yeah, exactly.
So it eliminates half the cards already.
Yeah, but Commander's ban list comparatively is so short.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm saying. It is a completely different game. And you shouldn't look at Commander with the same lens as Modern or Pauper or Draft or Standard. Because you're looking at it with this lens of that dark orange logo of the set means that it's a good card and I should play it in my colors.
Yeah.
Commander's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
And you can get more out of it if you look deeper. And usually, the deeper you look, the more trinkets you find that work really well. And by trinkets, I mean these cheap cards that we're talking about now.
Yeah, and look, you will have a little bit of a kind of hipster feeling. I'm not lying.
That is so predictable, you two.
But seriously, there's something so satisfying about when you play a card that nobody's heard of, and then someone reads it and goes, "That's amazing."
Twiddle. Again, look it up.
Oh my
Okay,
god.
I am gonna, before we even get to the end of the podcast, I'm gonna do it to the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
To the listeners, go on Scryfall, type in Twiddle, find Twiddle, and tell us what deck does Walt play this in that we've mentioned this episode.
Everyone who plays at the store is gonna get it straight away.
There you go, but that's my tip to the listeners halfway through. There you
See
go.
if you can work it out. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think people, I definitely did this when I first started playing. Where, sorry, I'm going off script a bit here, but
Go.
But when I would look up cards, like, because I had a collection of cards I had from when I played when I was really young.
Yeah,
right?
but they were all whiteboarded. They looked like they'd been drowned in milk.
I didn't know what a sleeve was.
No, I do remember actually introducing you to the new era of Magic. And you went, I've got some Magic cards. And you pulled out an iPad box that had... It was literally an iPad Air box just filled with cards and the dirtiest, like, elastic bands holding them together.
It was.
And I was a brand new player as well. So I looked at it and went, totally acceptable.
I see nothing wrong here.
There's nothing wrong with this situation.
Oh my god. I mean, yeah, yours is probably just deck boxes, right? You just had like a deck box and a deck box.
Yeah, that was it.
Anyway, when I was kind of like, oh my god, because I haven't played in so long, some of these cards have like accrued value. And so I just started looking them up. I just like find a rare and be like, oh, I wonder what this is worth. And I'd look them up. And I made this mistake of finding cards that were like $4 or $5 and being like, oh, it must be great. And putting it in a deck. I'll give an example. If I can even remember the name of the card. Oh, you'll probably know it. It's 1 black. I think it's a 1/2. He's a vampire knight. And at the beginning of the end step, if someone took 3 or more damage...
Is it Knight of the Ebon Legion?
Yes! I think so.
Wow, God, I'm good.
Good stuff. At the beginning of the end step, I think if a player lost 3 or more life, you put a +1 counter on it.
That's Knight of the Ebon Legion.
Yes.
I
think you can pay 2 and a black and you buff him as well.
+3/+3 and Death Touch.
I think it's +2/+2 Death Touch. Yeah. But it's like...
This goes to show how influential Theo's vampire deck builds are getting to me.
Well, there's a lot of vampires kicking around the store these days. It's true. Anyway, but I looked it up and it was like a $4 or $5 card. And I'm like, wow, this must be amazing. I put it in my Knights deck because I was like, this is a Knight.
It's a Knight. Yeah.
So good. It is not a good commander card. I'm sorry, but like
it was great in standard at the time.
Yes, and this is the thing. And I watched someone play Modern, I think, and they were playing like a Vampires Modern brew, and it was like a house. Because in those formats, like that ability to slowly accrue value, especially on a 1-drop, is amazing.
Especially where the meta in that format at the moment is slow and grindy control. Yeah.
Exactly. But like, yeah, comparatively, in Commander, like in my Seguin deck, for instance, right? I want to suit my Knights up with a bunch of equipment. So the thing I realized recently...
hit quick.
Yeah, I also want keywords. So they can be small creatures, but if those creatures have Trample or First Strike... or haste, like Lifelink's a really good one. Double strike is like, gravy, you know?
Yeah.
Like if they have those keywords, then suddenly I've chucked all these equipment on it. It's like, okay, this is a 5/5 with lifelink and double strike.
And now it's gonna kill you.
Yeah. None of the Ebon Legion, unless you pay that buffing
3
thing.
mana or whatever it is.
Oh, maybe it has Death Touch by default. But look, like, it's not affecting the game in a way that is worth the $5 that you're going to pay for.
That's a really good
right?
example, yeah. I think that there's a lot of examples that people generally jump to immediately with certain archetypes. You know, like I'm struggling to think of some, but like there's certain artifacts that every artifact player looks at and goes, oh, I should really put this in my artifact deck. But for me, when I was building Brutaclad, which we've mentioned on this podcast before, it's not an artifact deck, it's a token deck. So like a lot of the time it's like, I don't really care, like, but I ran it for a long time. You know, it's those things that I think, again, my message of Commander being such a nuanced thing, you can find such better synergies for, again, such a low price because, again, this is big brain stuff right here. This is the podcast for big brain. If you big brain this, you can go around the EDH Rec top 10 and find something cheaper and better for your specific deck if you look in the right places.
It's true. I totally agree. The one thing I will say as a little bit of a caveat, I don't want to get carried away and people thinking like budget is always amazing. There are certain decks that are going to be great for playing on a budget, like super budget friendly, and some decks that are not.
I know that, like, for example, equipment decks are usually pretty budget friendly because there are lots of equipments that are cheap.
There's lots of good solid equipment. I will say there's like...
If you want to get to the top tier, like the
Ember
swords,
Cleave's like $10 or $15. The swords are very expensive. Yeah. a good example of another one you can play super cheap is, basically anything graveyard based. You can build a budget Marin deck that will obliterate everyone you play against.
Yeah, I love this example actually. Your Marin deck was a very budget build when you originally built it.
Yeah.
And we had another member of our store, Stubbsy, who had quite an expensive Marin deck, which had a birthing pod in it and all this kind of stuff. But I hated both of them equally. Like, that's those
the measure of how strong the deck was.
I hated them both equally. They were both fantastic. Yeah. So it's like those kinds of decks, you can do.
We've mentioned around me the Aristocrats Marchesa deck I built. So all these graveyard strategies, like most of the spells that you're going to want to play in the deck are not expensive. Most Aristocrats, the ones that when a creature dies, you're dealing a damage, you're gaining a life, whatever. Those are not expensive. Most decent reanimation spells are not expensive. So that's going to be a good way to go. Tokens, I love tokens. Brutaclad is your one token deck, which you do bring out a lot, I would say, actually.
I have started bringing it. It's funny, actually, since we've spoken about it on this podcast, people have asked to play against it.
Really?
It's become a bit of a weird... people have asked me in store, you've spoken about it a million times, can you play it? I'm like, warning, it could pop off.
Yeah, totally.
and I think I ended up Mindslaver locking, I think it might have been Mark.
You end up doing that way too often. I know,
but this is the thing. It's like, I could easily be broken because I've got 4 up. I can't Mindslaver lock everyone.
Yes.
But then it becomes a 2v2. And it's pretty funny to watch. And I think
it is fun. It's fun to play against. It's like when you get Mindslaver, it's a bit of a feels bad, but it's pretty funny. And like the amount of mana that you're spending.
I have to spend 10 mana a turn to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the most efficient way of that lock. That's the most efficient way.
You can't feel that bad about
doing shit all on my turn.
Tokens, you can totally do tokens on a budget. There's like a million tokens decks out there.
But tribes are really easily as well.
Yeah, there's
elves and goblins are pretty...
Elves and goblins are pretty good. I think tribes are an interesting one where if it's a tribe that's got a lot of support...
Like elves and goblins.
Elves and goblins are a great example. There's a million elves and goblins out there, right? Yeah. So you can find the budget ones that'll suit your deck. But you're always going to having owned many of these decks.
There's going to be the one card that you want to play.
Or 10. If you're playing goblins, my Krenko deck is one of my least budget decks now because you see that goblin and he's $10,
You've got a Muxus Goblin Grande.
Yeah, I've got a Muxus in. I think I cracked Muxus actually. But I bought a couple. I remember I bought a card from Facebook Marketplace.
Wow.
That was I think he's red. He's got double strike. But he's a 1/1. But whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you can put a goblin from your hand onto the battlefield.
He's got double strike. So
he's got double strike.
Hit,
you get him down turn 2. No one's going to block a turn 3. You're like, okay, I'm going to drop these 2 goblins. Drop Muxus, for free on turn 3.
That seems good.
Yeah.
But again, I had a very similar experience with my Abomination Llanowar deck. After Commander Legends, the original Commander Legends came out, I was like, I'm building this. It's an elf, but it's literally a ball of elves.
So flavorful.
I was like, this is sick. And I had a bunch of elves already. I remember I actually put in the Card Kingdom order with you, and you complimented me saying it was one of my most budget builds.
Yeah, it was actually.
Because I was
remember.
Really cheapskatey about it. And I got cards like the enchantment that if a creature dies, you draw a card at the end step. Moldavine Reclamation.
Yeah.
Something like that. And you were like, hey, good job, James. Really good job.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, this deck has crept up. I've now got a Priest of Titania in there. I've got a Craterhoof Behemoth in there.
That's right.
So, it's slowly creeped up on me. And I looked at it the other day. And I played it the other day in a casual pod. And I realized
not so casual anymore.
Well, I was playing against 2 precons, and because I initially built this as a precon level competitive.
That was
deck.
kind of the goal, right?
It was, yeah. And now I have a precon sleeved up, but I was like, I'll play elves. It's a little bit funnier. And I looked at my opening hand and was like, I've got 8 elves on turn 4. And
damn.
That's quick because I had some seriously good ramp, and I had the Lizalana. Wherever you cast an elf, you create an elf.
Oh, that card's nuts. Yeah, Lizalana Hunt Master.
The Hunt Master, and I was like, far out. This is a good deck now. I probably have gone 2 hands.
And this is often what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably a good place to jump in here and say that, by all means, when you build your deck, make your choice, like I was talking about earlier, decide what your budget is, build at that budget. But also, as you're deck building, come up with a bit of a list of, I like to call them, I think this is actually borrowed from Mish from the Commander's Quarters.
Okay.
He calls them reasonable upgrades.
Yeah, I have heard these. At the end of his videos, he goes, and here's a list of reasonable upgrades.
Yeah, and so they're usually like $5 or $6 cards, but they're amazing in
They
the deck,
will bump
right?
your power up.
Yeah. It's not necessarily like, let's say Priest of Titania, for instance. That card's like $12 or $13.
I think it's even more now. Actually.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's amazing. Like, it's an absolutely phenomenal card, but like, this is actually not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a card that goes down and then the rest of the deck works twice as well.
I'll get a good example in that deck.
Yep.
I think it's about $5, $6 maybe. It's Beast Caller. Beast Whisperer.
Yes, great example.
Great example. I actually didn't include that in my initial list because I was like, it's just a little bit too much, and I've got
like $5, I think.
And I've got some card draw spells. Like, I was including Harmonize in the list. Like, that was the kind of level of like draw I was. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna put Beast Caller in here, see how it does. Spoiler alert, Beast Whisperer.
Yep.
Put Beast Whisperer in, see how it does. Spoiler alert. Every single spell drew me a card. Everything cantrips. I was like, this is sick.
Yeah, that card's incredible in any elf deck, any small creatures deck. I've definitely splurged a little bit the last few times. Every time I place a singles order these days, I buy a lot of my cards like directly from singles places. I'm not going to name drop the main one I use because I'm angry at them at the moment. They don't get my money anymore.
That's like hashtag unspawn.
Yeah, hashtag, you know, they do like hashtag ad on YouTube now.
Yeah,
hashtag not ad.
Anti-ad.
Hashtag smear.
Whoa, that's
smear
some
campaign.
Hardcore wording.
Oh my god. Anyway, I'm not going to name drop them.
But like yes, some deck types work so well for budget because of the reasons we mentioned.
Yeah.
And then you can make these little upgrades.
Yeah.
But like you said, there are some archetypes that just aren't that good because all the cards that you need in the deck to make them go molto bueno, they get really, really good. They're really expensive.
Yeah.
And like the one that jumps to top of mind, and I always think about this, is lands. So, for example, every time we talk about lands decks, we always talk about our two decks. We always talk about my Fire Left deck and your Rada deck.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I've spent more money on my Fire Left deck than Walt spent on his Rada deck, just because, I don't know, I don't think about it enough.
Yeah.
And I run Crucible of Worlds. I run the Ancient Green Warden. I run all these kinds of splashy cards, money value-wise, that Walt doesn't, and it just performs a little bit
way
better.
more consistent.
I was being really nice. I was being like a little bit better.
No. Like, I think I even said this to you like early on that it was a bit disheartening especially because I'd sort of gotten in my groove with building budget decks, and I kind of gotten used to the fact that I could build these budget decks and then play against one of the guys we were playing with this time. This was during like COVID lockdowns. I built this deck. One of the guys we were playing with didn't really spend any money on his decks, but you and your partner at the time spent a lot of money on your decks.
Unfortunately, way too much.
Yes, and I took a lot of pride in the fact that my decks hung and often won against those decks.
The other thing that you did as well, which was investigate how to play really well, which was another thing that you should give yourself credit for.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. But anyway, like, it was disheartening when I built this Rada deck because you built your Fire Left deck at a really similar time.
Yeah.
And I would just watch your Fire Left deck work, and I was like, I can't make my deck do this without spending. I can't have Crucible of Worlds. I can buy Remunap Excavator.
I have
for a few bucks,
three
but
fetch lands to use.
Exactly. You had Remunap Excavator. I had Remunap Excavator. You had Crucible of Worlds. You had Ancient Green Warden. Yeah. I just did not have those cards. There are no budget alternatives of those cards. Like, you can't you can't do it. Like, there's not another way you can do it. And this is why I think, certain archetypes, like the graveyard decks, like the tribal decks, you can find your niche and your weird little way of doing it. But lands is a great example of something where it's really
hard.
And I think you can build it and it can be fun, but you've got to know that you're not at that level.
I think the reason it is so difficult is because most of the key, like we've talked about Crucible of Worlds and stuff as well, but like key lands in land decks, specifically for landfall, fetch lands.
Yeah.
If you build budget, you're not going to be buying all the fetch lands you can run.
No.
Because they're way too expensive. So you run the ones that you're available, which is Terramorphic Expanse,
Evolving Wilds,
and Fabled Passage, maybe, if you want to spend a little bit.
That's even a bit of a splash for me.
It's even a bit of a splash. So you got 3. Awesome, good stuff. And then you can run maybe Myriad Landscape.
Yeah,
Myriad Landscape's a good one.
All of these examples, except Fabled Passage, those enter the battlefield tapped, and that makes a huge difference. Like, if you're doing the absolutely nuts ramp thing of, you've got your Azusa down, so you can play 3 lands a turn. You've got your Crucible of Worlds down. If you've got a fetch land that makes them enter the battlefield untapped, you are ramping 3 mana that turn
that you can
and
use.
every subsequent turn.
And you get 6 landfall triggers as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. But like, if you can do exactly the same thing with Evolving Wilds if you've got Ramunet Excavator down and Azusa, who is not budget anymore.
Nope.
But all those lands are in the battlefield tapped, and that's actually going to make a huge difference. That's 3 less mana every turn than you have compared to the fetch lands deck, right?
Yeah. It's one of those unfortunate things because, like, you are such a passionate budget player. And by default, just by proximity, I love seeing decks that are budget do really well.
Yep.
It's really disappointing that some archetypes just don't have the common or uncommon cards to support those insane rare land drops that, like, you need to play. Like,
and look, you can do it, but you have to find your niche, right? And so, like, my lands deck is fun because it's a Voltron deck, right?
It's also lands matter, not landfall.
There's not that many landfall cards in there. Yeah, it's mostly about just having a lot of lands. So you just ramp a bunch and then you just sit there and are like, I've got this huge creature. This is fun.
And in that sense, you can play budget because Rampant Growth, Kadama's Reach...
Yeah, these cards are all like $2 or less. Yeah. And look, like, I'm actually going to disassemble my Rad deck someday soon, which is a bit sad.
That is a bit sad,
but I'm transforming it into Averna, the Chaos Bloom.
Oh, that is a land deck.
I actually traded you for the copy of the card, so you know what I'm talking about. But it's whenever you cascade, you can play a land from the cascaded cards.
Yeah,
you just get to do
so
it.
Cool.
It's so wacky. It's I always forget the name. Tima. Blue, green, red.
Yeah. A lot of people call it Wet Gruel.
Wet Gruel. That's pretty much how the deck is. It's got like 3 blue cards in it. But anyway, like, that is my like budget line of good in that deck, right? I'm taking all of the good lands deck cards that I already have, but I'm gonna find my perfect budget landfall cascade deck.
List. Yeah. I can't wait to see it. I have remembered you saying that you're building it, but it's now a little bit sad that I know that Rada's getting disassembled.
Yeah. It's just, I've got too many decks. This is how I keep myself in check. I build new decks by disassembling old ones.
That makes sense. And also, there you go. You're going to use cards out of that deck in the new one.
There you go. That's a budget recommendation for you. Build, like, if you're going to build a new deck, disassemble another one, especially if you can use those cards again in other decks. Yeah.
Reuse, reduce, recycle.
Exactly. Anyway, sorry. We were talking about reasonable upgrades. I had a couple of examples. Sublime Epiphany I recently bought for my Kaza deck specifically. So Kaza, I think I can talk about Kaza every episode.
It has been mentioned every single episode. I had a community member check, actually, and it's been mentioned every episode.
Oh my god. Anyway, it's a wizard for blue and a red. You tap it, it makes your instants or sorceries cost less, where X is the number of wizards you have, right? Sublime Epiphany...
It's 4 blue.
4 blue, and then it's got a bunch of lines of text. I'm not even going to say them. It does everything you want it to do. But in a Kaza deck, you make it cost blue. So one of the modes of Sublime Epiphany is counter target spell.
So already it's on par with counterspell.
Yeah.
Already.
And then you're like, oh yeah, cool. I'll draw a card, I'll bounce that, I'll make a token copy of this wizard. Amazing, right?
It's pretty good.
The card's like $6 or $7. I was like, I don't care. Like, that is so good in that deck.
Yeah.
I splurged on a Divergent Transformations in my weird Boros Polymorph deck.
I remember when you built this deck and you didn't allow me to look at the list and you didn't allow me to look at the commanders. And the first time we played it, you said, you have to guess what this deck is. And I was like, sure. Mountain, pass. Plains, pass. Krark, the Thumbless? I'm like, Chaos? Is it Chaos? And you're like, maybe. And you kept playing it, and then you polymorphed, or like sacrificed Krark and Doug, and then Feather came out, and I was like, what the hell is this?
It's basically like a weird... It wants to polymorph. Feather's great in the deck. It wants to polymorph into either Zada or Mirrorwing Dragon.
Yeah.
And you have a bunch of tokens and you basically get copies of all your spells. It's good fun.
So it runs the Young Pyromancer.
Yeah, but there's 6 creatures in the deck and they all make the deck go great. Yeah. But the thing is, you need the Polymorph card. So Polymorph is any card that you exile a creature and you reveal cards until you reveal a creature. So it basically swaps a creature with one in your library. And so when you have like almost no creatures in your library, you always hit the creatures you want, right? Which is kind of the trick. Anyway, because I'm only in Boros, like most polymorph cards are actually blue. There weren't very many budget red polymorph spells.
No.
So I splurged on a Divergent Transformations, which has that weird mechanic Undaunted costs less for every opponent you have.
Yeah, that was like one of those commander mechanics
Yeah,
they tried to shoehorn in.
Yeah, like from a couple of years ago. I think it was in the precons or something.
Yeah.
But it exiles 2 creatures, and it's instant speed, 4 mana if you've got 3 opponents, and you polymorph until you get 2 creatures.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so like way better than every other polymorph in the deck.
Yeah.
Like absolutely needed one for the deck to function. I think it was like $8 or $9, but I was like, whatever. That if I ever cast that spell, it's incredible.
Winning the game.
Yeah, right. It's amazing.
You're getting your Zada. You're getting your
Can you think of any examples of like cards you've recently splurged on to make your decks function a bit better?
Yeah, not recently, but like I think the one that was for me because I built Scarab God as kind of like a plays at any table kind of deck, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely bumped in power level now, and I'm refusing to say I can play it at any table now because it's now at the point where it just wins so well.
Yeah, it hums just like beautifully.
Yeah, you turn it on and it revs and then it's idle. The noise that it makes when it's idling is just incredible. This race car analogy is really good.
James's experience riding motorcycles and being a bit of a motorhead, just like sliding straight.
It's working
head
perfectly.
first into the episode.
Nice. The 2 cards that I can remember specifically buying that were like super like justifiable buys for it was Rooftop Storm.
Oh, yeah.
Which, can I tell you a funny...
That card is so stupid.
It is 6 mana to cast. It is
still
huge. But 0, you can cast zombies for 0. That's the card. That's what it is.
Like, if they printed that today, it would be maybe 5 mana, but it would say... once per turn.
Yeah, it would give a card.
Once per turn.
Or it would say from graveyard only.
Yeah.
Like it would make you jump
if
through
a creature
hoops.
died this turn, you may blah blah. But instead it just says you
can
may
cast
pay
zombies for
0
nothing.
rather than pay the mana value of zombies.
And look, can I tell you a really funny story about this,
Sure.
which will make a budget player laugh?
Okay.
I was looking at my Scarab God deck, and I was remembering we were putting in a group order, and I was like, you know what? Rooftop Storm, this is the time. I've not played Scarab God in a while, and I think it's because it's too casual. I want to bump it up in power. Let's buy it.
Yep.
And at the time, I think it was in the $20 kind of zone, maybe something like that.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Then Midnight Hunt came out.
and they printed it in the pre-con.
And it came out, but you know what's even worse? I now have 2 copies of it because I bought the pre-con because it was so good.
Oh, because you wanted all the other cards.
All the other cards. So I wanted Will Helt. I wanted all the other cards.
And even worse now, like whichever copy you're trying to move on, it's like a $3 or $4 card.
I know, it's so bad.
Oh, James.
It really, really hurt. But the other one that I bought for Scarab God that held value so well, Sphinx of the Second Sun.
Oh, that card's nuts.
It is dumb. I'm so and especially in a deck that you can cheat it out with. Oh my god, is it good? So for everyone, it's actually quite a complicated card.
It's 6 blue.
I think
believe.
it's 4 blue. I think it's 6 mana total, or it could be more than that.
I think it's 8. It's like such a.
It's a mythic
steep
rare.
cost.
It is It is a bomb card. It's a 4/4 or a 5/5 with flying. I think this might be a 6/6 with flying.
It's a Sphinx, naturally.
6. Yeah, there you go. Sphinx 6/6 with flying. The text on it is actually really hard to wrap your head around. It says at the beginning of the beginning of your post-combat main phase.
Main phase 2.
At the end of this phase, you get another beginning phase. So
weird.
The way it works, it is super weird, but the way it works, it triggers at the start of post-combat, which is main phase 2.
Yes. So as you leave in combat, entering main phase 2, this trigger goes on the stack.
Correct. But it doesn't resolve and happen. I might be using the wrong wording here, until after the phase ends. So you have to go through your second main phase.
Such a weird card.
So basically...
We should also explain, I think, because the word beginning phase
includes...
So, yeah, your
untap, upkeep, and draw.
And draw.
So you get a whole nother beginning phase, untap, upkeep, draw, at the end of your turn, basically. That's the way it works. But for Scarab God, because Scarab God has an upkeep trigger of draining everyone and scrying X for the amount of zombies you control... You're now doing that twice a turn.
Yeah.
Not only that, you are untapping, which means you have more mana to reanimate relevant creatures from other people's bins on other people's turns.
This is a really good example, I think, of a synergy piece, right? Because the floor for this card is so high
it's
already,
like,
right?
It's like Seaborn Muse, kind of. Like, you get
you get
untap and another
you
card.
also draw a card.
Draw a card's
yeah,
good.
like, it's already fine, but, like, you've got so many boxes you're ticking.
God.
You're reanimating it, right? You're actually cheating the cost.
I get it out.
Always costs 4.
And because now I have a lot of tutors to graveyard,
yeah,
I cheat this thing out on turn 4
I've seen
or
it all the
5.
time. I've seen you reanimate it, like, on turn 3 or 4. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, like, that it's already drawing you the card and untapping your stuff. But Scarab God has an instant speed activated ability, so you've got something to use your mana on no matter what.
Yep.
And Scarab God is an upkeep trigger.
Yep.
So, like, you never feel bad with that card. Ever. Ever.
And like, if you run cards like search a target opponent's library for a card and remove every card with the same name, if you run one of those cards in your commander deck, which, by the way, I don't know why you do, but... Some people do because they love hitting key pieces from someone's library before they even get a chance.
I actually used to run a couple of them specifically
Rest
in my
in
Arami
Peace?
deck.
Yeah.
For Rest in Peace. Oh, God. When someone casts a Rest in Peace and you're playing a graveyard deck, you're just like, I can't do anything.
But if you run one of those, if you're playing against me, Sphinx the Second Son's the one to hit.
Yeah.
But at the time, it wasn't that expensive. I actually haven't looked at the price now, but I imagine it's gone up.
It's up. Yeah, it's got to be around the $20 mark, I reckon.
Surely. It's so good.
It's just one of those cards. There's definitely a thing with cards that have a lot of text on them.
They just do a lot.
They do a lot.
They do heaps.
But I think, like, people sleep on them because they kind of don't... You've got to, like, really contextualize this information in your head sometimes.
You've got to put it in the right deck, too.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of got to, like... With any card, I think it's good to imagine, like, what's the absolute ceiling here and what's the floor, right? Because the floor is going to tell you, is this card worth running in my deck at all? And the ceiling, if the floor's not too low and the ceiling is, like, way up there, like we were talking about this card, way up there, then we're talking about budget. This might be the card that's worth spending the money on.
Yeah, and if this is, again, and this is the thing, if you're building that engine and you're getting the part, I could go into like engine builds, but I don't know how many people in our audience
I
know
won't follow,
parts.
so okay. I'm going to veto that right away.
Sure, if you're getting the vroom vroom part, the bit that makes the car go really fast, you really have to think, are you going to cheap out on this part, or is this the section of your deck that you're going to chuck the money into? And again, this is the bit where budget doesn't mean, and I think we probably should have said this at the start of the episode, but I'm glad we're saying it at the end. Budget doesn't mean play cheap cards.
No.
It means budget your money to put the money where it's best used.
Yeah. I mean, the command was use your finances to your advantage, right? Yeah. So it's not saying don't spend expensive cards. It's not saying, like, build on a budget exclusively, really. Like, it's a good idea to do it. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's saying when you spend your money, know what you're spending your money for. Decide what you're spending your money for. Yeah. Look, one thing I will say, if we are deciding to spend this money, is there is a bit of a trick that I've learned here. I actually haven't done this, so I'm just going to shout out the guy who I heard this from, which is our good friend Jordan.
Yeah, for proxying?
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Jordan, when he has his heart set on a card and he doesn't own it yet, he just proxies it. And look, like 98% of pods do not care about proxying. So just do it. Mention at the start of the game that you've got some so people will know about it.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem with us to it. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely fine. But yeah, what it lets you do is you have that card there. You get to see it. You get to play it. You get to see how it interacts with the rest of your deck. And yeah, like if you play that Swings of the Second Son in your Scarab God deck and you're like, wow, this card is nuts in every circumstance. You know, then you can spend the money and you know you're going to get that amazing experience because you've seen it already.
The other thing that I will do, that I'll say here that's really good about doing these proxy things is because you will immediately find the people that have it for trade. If I played a proxy for Sphinx of the Second Son at a pod and someone's like, I've got a copy of that.
Yeah, I'll trade you for it.
And then at the end of the game, you win because you had Sphinx of the Second Son. You're like, sure, I'll take that card off.
Put that aside for me right now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I will say, if you're going to be playtesting, I like to do at least 3 to 5 times with the commander deck because it's singleton. Like, you're not going to see every game. So if it's a one card you got your heart set on, play it at least 3 times, I reckon. Because you'll see, I reckon 3 times you'll see the really amazing times. You'll also see it on a board where it's not so good. And there will be cards that you thought were going to be amazing all the time.
And are dead in your hand.
Yeah.
And there is another trick that, again, credit to Jordan where credit is due here, because there's another trick you can do which gets around people that don't like playing against proxies.
We've actually mentioned this technique before.
I think we did on this podcast. I think it was really early on in the podcast.
I think we did.
But the trick is you complete a deck with all your real cards, and then if you want to proxy something, you put a slip of paper, not a full proxy of the card, just a slip of paper with the name of the card in where that card is.
So this isn't a proxy, to clarify.
Yeah.
Like, the card is just the card.
Yeah.
But the thing that we're doing here is you're seeing what the other card that could be in this slot in the deck could be like.
So when you draw it, what are you going to prefer? Are you going to prefer the murder or the tragic slip?
Yes, exactly.
Which
it's going to let you see, like what it actually is like
Yeah.
to draw the card. And then when you play it, you can just take the little slip of paper out and be like, oh, sorry, this is just me trying to brainstorm.
Or if you say, hey, does anyone mind if I play this as Tragic Slip?
Yeah.
Like, you can say, like, before the game. Not during the game, before the game.
Before the game,
Before the
yeah,
game,
sure.
say, hey,
Yeah,
I've got Tragic Slip written on a murder here. Can I play it as Tragic Slip because I want to see how it works?
Yeah.
Go for it. You
Yeah.
can kill Emrakul now.
It does just kill everything. That feels so good. I started playing that deck specifically because there were a lot of Eldrazi being played at the pods that we were playing at. And I was just like, yeah, cool. For 1 black, I'd love to kill... Oh my god, I want to kill Ulamog so bad.
Done.
Because
Slight tangent and very much away from budget.
Sure.
Have you seen the spoiler for the full art Ulamog Infinite Gaia?
The Double Masters.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it. I can't recall it.
I have to show you it afterwards. It is gorgeous.
It's amazing.
It is phenomenal.
I think here's my inner budget boy coming out.
Yeah.
The thing I'm most excited for from the Double Masters set is the new versions, like the extended frames of the bounce lands.
They look so cool.
They look amazing.
There was on MTG Goldfish's Instagram. They did
they're like the spoiler place. Right?
Yeah, I love going on their Instagram when a new set's coming out.
Yeah,
but like if it was basically every slide was one of them, and you swiped through them all and saw a different version. The last one had all of them laid out, and it just looks like I would hang that shit on my wall. It looks so pretty.
They're really gorgeous. And like the thing is, this is what happens with sets. I mean, this is like next level big brain stuff, right?
Yeah, okay.
The thing that happens with sets with like really high demand cards, especially in the rare and mythic rare slots, is if they print something in a lower slot, like an uncommon slot, especially a common slot, even cards that are amazing, if you buy them around the time the set comes out, will be dirt cheap. So I was looking up cards the other day.
Yeah,
I went through the full spoiler list of Double Masters because I had a bunch of time. I was sick from work.
Amazing. What a good use of time.
I was just like, I want to see these cards. I want to see what they've done. And what I would do is I opened a new tab with each card that looked interesting, and then I opened a card ordering website that will remain nameless. Anti-ad. And I would look at the price and I'd be like, do I actually want it that badly? Nah. And most of the time it was a no. And then I saw the bounce lands and I was like, oh man, I really love these frames.
You should buy the Azorius ones for your Pauper Flicker deck. Is that what you're planning on doing?
Well, the thing is, right, I looked them up and I was like, oh man, these are so beautiful, but everyone loves bounce lands. They're going to be so expensive. And then I was like, hold on. They're printed at uncommon, and this is Double Masters. This is a set people are going to open like crazy.
Oh, it's insane.
The Azorius one, which is in my opinion one of the most beautiful ones, is like $1.
Really?
For this, like, it's an extended art.
Borderless.
It's borderless. It's
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It was like $1.50 or something on this website. And I'm like, I'm just going to replace every copy I own with one of these. Because why wouldn't I?
You've got a lot of Azorius.
Yeah, I do, actually. I've got at least 2. It's one of the, I think it's the
Commander
only color.
decks?
It's one of 2 Commander color combinations that I have. No, 3. I have 3 color combinations where I own more than one Commander.
I'm going to go through that. I reckon you've got Selesnya.
Yes.
Azorius.
Yes.
Oh,
I thought this one would stump you.
Golgari?
No.
No?
It's Mardu.
Oh, so
Red, black,
true.
white. Yeah, because I have my Seguin deck, and I mean they're so different. But I just built this Aristocrats deck.
I totally forgot the Queen Marchesa deck. That's true.
Yeah.
I weirdly wanted to say, is it? But the only one you've got is the Wizards one.
It is. I just play it all the time.
I just dream of
Walt
being on my side.
It's true. Anyway, should we move on to this last page?
I think we should. Let's throw it.
Away. Oh my god.
Whoa.
Testament to the length of this episode. It's already 2 of those. But look, I just want to wrap it up and say, look, most people who play this game are going to own expensive cards. So that's what they're going to recommend. When you say, hey, I'm looking for cards that I want, they're going to say to you, hey, I reckon you should try this. And so you're going to have to think outside the box when you build on a budget, but it's a lot of fun. And I hope we've emphasized more than anything else that building on a budget and finding those niche cards is like extremely fun.
It's actually a game in of it itself.
It's incredible. Like I really cannot attest enough to how much fun it is to find those cards,
and winning with them as well. You feel like a baller. Like,
you do. And I talked about that sort of hipster effect of when you play that card that nobody's heard of. And it feels really cool to have done that.
This is like the equivalent. I'm going to imagine Fast and Furious scene, right?
Okay.
Yep. Painted cars, gorgeous. They're like, they've got the hydraulics and they've got the music playing and all that kinds of flames coming out the side and stuff. You rock up with like just a black car, and it's kind of shitty. It's like the paint job's not good, the bumper's falling off, but you have a V12 supercharged engine in that bad boy, and
no,
tuned it.
James, come on. It's Fast and the Furious. I have 10 tanks of nitrous
there
in the boot of the car.
But that thing is tuned.
Yeah.
Now, I really love this expression of the car, because when you tune an engine, it's making the engine as powerful as it can be in certain situations. So, for example, when I raced motocross, I would set my engine to be very powerful at the bottom end of revs and the top end. So that way it comes out of corners really, really fast. And when it's on a big straight, it can hold power and keep going. That's what tuning an engine does.
Right.
Think about it like that. You are tuning your deck. You're making that engine as efficient and effective as possible.
Yeah, 100%. And look, when you only play the best cards, it's something we didn't really talk about, but you shrink the card pool a lot. When you look at CDH, the number of cards that are played, let's say it's 1,000 cards that are in commonly appear in CDH. Think about how many cards appear in all of Commander and in casual Commander, and then think about budget. If you only used cards under $3, let's say, how huge is your pool of cards that you're choosing from? And how much fun is it going to be to look at that pool of cards and say, I can play anything here?
Yeah, right? and also and this is the thing, you add diversity and fun for the table when you build budget as well. Again, Twiddle, go look it up. That whole interaction with when you played that card, everyone was hooting and hollering and having a fun time because no one had heard of it before.
Yeah.
And the fact that no one heard of it before made the game fun and interesting, because everyone expects you to play Smothering Tithe. Everyone knows that you'll play Heuristic Study. Everyone knows that the counter spell is probably a Force of Will.
Yeah.
Find something better. Do something fun.
Do something different.
Yep.
Completely agree.
I don't know why that...
You had to ruin that beautiful wrap-up, James, with the McDonald's theme. If there's one other message you can take from this, stop it, James. Stop it.
Stop being a corporate shill.
Question for the listeners. Tell James to stop. For the listeners, what is your budget? We'd asked you to think about it at the start of the episode. What's budget to you? And do you have any examples of really good cheap cards? Or, I'm interested to hear this as well because we've talked about it, bad expensive cards.
Oh, I love bad expensive cards.
Right.
Because I love people that get tricked of playing them and then they're just not good. And there's a vampire that's super expensive. It's 6 mana or something like that. And it looks like it should be really good. But it's a 1/3. I can't remember what card it is. It dies super easily, and every vampire player gets really sad when you remove it. It's
from personal experience, James.
Yep, I can talk from personal experience.
Well, James, it is tradition at the end of the episode for you to provide us with the play of the week.
Okay, I am actually going to get this card up because...
Oh, that's right. We talked about it before.
Yes, I was mentioning this before. I've got the card in front of me now, so I can actually remember exactly what it does. So let me set the scene for you.
Okay.
The pod is myself, Stella, Theo, and Nick.
Okay.
I can't... Oh, I remember what deck I was playing. I was playing Brutaclad.
Oh, great.
Remember.
Brutaclad is your Karza, I think.
It 100%
comes up all the time.
Is it decks? Look, man, they pop up. There you go.
You're taking over this podcast.
And look, they're interesting as it decks, eventually I'll say hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Is It Player podcast. Okay, so this is the situation. Yep. Theo's playing a really cool blood token deck that drops... It's the Stefan deck, where when it attacks, you sacrifice 2 blood and you can put a vampire from your hand onto the battlefield, taps and attacking.
But it also makes blood in the end step or something?
It's also, they enter tapped and indestructible as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that card's
so
nuts.
Good, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, on turn 3 or 4, Theo drops this card called Crimson Honor Guard.
Right.
So it's 3 red and a red for a creature vampire knight. It's a 4/5 with trample, firstly. It's a pretty good body.
Great rate. 5 mana, 4/5 trample. Not bad at all.
Yeah. But this is the bit that really made the game interesting.
Okay.
At the beginning of each player's end step, Crimson Honor Guard deals 4 damage to that player unless they control a commander.
What?
Yeah, this card...
Each player's end step? Oh, so and it checks to see if they control to that player. Right, so at the end of my turn...
Yeah, if you don't control
if I don't have
commander...
Karza...
if you don't have Karza...
I'm taking
punch,
4
to the face.
Every turn?
Yeah, every turn. So
That's wild.
It's insane. It is really good card, but that wasn't the play that was the play of the week.
Okay.
The next turn, Nick's playing his... is it Adrix and Nev, or is it the... Asics, the one that every time... So it's a green-blue commander. Every time you would make one or more tokens on your turn... Adrix and Nev.
Yeah.
I think it's those two. I think it's actually the alternate commander in that precon. It's the one where whenever you make one or more tokens, you can have them enter as a creature on the battlefield.
Oh, it is Essex. No, I'm thinking of Adrix. Yes. Yeah, I'm thinking of Adrix and Nev, which is just like
Adrix and Nev is in
perception on a I think because he swapped the commanders for this
he
recently.
Did, yes.
It used to be Adrix and Nev. Now it's Essex.
Boy, oh boy, is he keeping it the same after this play.
I'm sure. So it's the sorry, just to clarify, it's the Simic one. Whenever tokens enter the battlefield, they can enter as any other creature on the battlefield.
Only once, and it has to be on your turn.
Okay.
So the idea is you try and create a ton of tokens in one splash on your turn.
Scoot Swarm.
And have them... Scoot Swarm's a goodie, but that's separate triggers. It's a really weird one. Okay. So you want to do things like Saproling Sprawling, where you create 4 1/1 Saprolings, but that spell now reads, create 4 copies of any creature on the battlefield.
Oh, okay.
You know it's another really good one? Avenger of Zendikar.
Oh, because that's the easiest one. All the plans enter as Avengers of Zendikar, right? Surely.
That would have been the play I would have done.
Oh no, Crimson Honor Guard!
Yeah, so Nick drops this
Avenger of Zendikar makes a plan for every land you control.
Which, by the way, 7.
Yeah.
7 plants coming in.
Sure.
Trigger on the stack. Essex is like, yo, plants are about to enter. They don't have to be plants. What creature would you like to copy? He just points at Crimson Honor Guard on Theo's board. All of our faces drop. And we're like, this is so bad. But thankfully, everyone had their commander in play. So everyone was like, okay, we're safe, but this is a problem. I get to my turn, and Brutal Cloud triggers. I'm about to go insane, go to combat, all that kind of stuff. I can't remember what happened, but I couldn't go to combat. But believe it or not, Nick's play is not play of the week.
No?
It's Stella's play.
What did Stella do?
Generous gift. She removed my commander on end step. At the beginning of each player's end step, Crimson Honor Guard deals 4 damage unless they control their commander.
Did you just die?
I straight up died.
Oh my god, it's like 8 times 4. Yeah. 7 times 4, 21?
I was on 18 life.
28? Oh my lord. That's insane.
I got domed by a generous gift. It was...
How generous.
It was... I honestly, it was one of those games where I was like crawling uphill the entire game, and I was really struggling to get the wheels turning.
Right.
And at the... I was like, all right, I'm going to move to end step. And Stella's like, before you move to end step. And I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she just kind of points the generous gift at Brutacard. I'm like... And I move it to command zone, and Theo's like, why is that so bad? I don't get... And then Nick just pointed to their Crimson Honor Guard. And was like,
7.
Oh. Well, no, pointed to Theo's one. And Theo's like, oh, he'll take 4 down. And then he just went, gestured like a chef presenting a dish at a restaurant. Just kind of gestured to the 7 token copies. And Theo was like, oh, he's dying. I get it. So my play of the week goes to Stella for... Crimson Honor Guard doming me without
not even having controlled the creature or done the play that made a bunch of them, just being like, hey, this is my chance.
If I
kill James.
Yeah. And realistically, I then thought about it. She could have killed Nick on Nick's turn.
Right.
She could have held it to kill Theo on Theo's turn.
Yeah.
No. She was
kill
just James. Like, I'm just going to take this opportunity and kill James.
I mean, we talked earlier about expensive cards and how they draw removal. Do you think me and you, when we play at our game store, draw removal? Because I reckon we might. I had a new player who must have just identified that I was just a guy who built weird, janky decks. Just, on his turn, he used, 3 different removal spells all on my board.
Ouch. That feels targeted.
And I was just kind of like, I'm doing stuff, but not that much stuff. And then I was just kind of like, maybe it's... what is it? I can't
just because we have a podcast doesn't mean we're really good.
Yeah, maybe you heard me say I had a podcast and he's like, oh my god, he's a pro. I'm going to kill this pro.
You are a spike, let's be fair.
I'm a spike. I am not a pro. Let's clarify right now.
Alright, should we get rid of the last page?
The last one.
Hey! Oh, it collided in the air. That was majestic.
Very nice. Thanks for listening, everybody. Catch you next time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.